surprise in Arizona. Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 2059. Who are getting up there in numbers? Tell the tale, the art of storytelling in genealogy. We all have stories to tell, and tonight we're going to explore it a little more. And I got inspired today. The last 3 days while working, I've had my laptop sitting here, and it has been playing in the background. And I was on the virtual, I was watching Grant Cardone's 10X growth conference, and it just played here quietly in the background, and I could listen to speakers between the chats, and sometimes I'd hit the mute button so I could concentrate on what I was reading on the screen and things like that. But he had 2 speakers on today that were absolutely amazing. And I was attending virtually, I was attending as a VIP, and they had the virtual lounge, and Pete Vargas III was our MC in that room, and he did bonus sessions for us. And he also had the guests that had been on, some of the guests that had been on stage come into the room and just have about 10 to 15 minutes with us, answering questions and getting thoughts and stuff. And this is after they'd been on stage. Not all of them came back, but some of them did. And so today we had 2 really cool speakers. So actually we had a lot of cool speakers. I mean, we had Jimmy Johns of Jimmy John's Sandwiches. We had Harold Ham, who was he's in the oil and gas business. Who else did we have on today? Oh, brain fry. We had so many good speakers on today. But the two last, the third to last and the second to last were like 2 of the best. Only because I have enjoyed watching them in their careers a lot. So the first of the speakers he had come up was Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs. And listening to him speak was just absolutely amazing. And what he did is that there was a woman there in the audience who was close to the stage. And he says, you've probably heard about this thing. Or has anybody here not heard about Dirty Jobs? And this woman towards the front named Barbara put up her hand. She had never seen an episode of Dirty Jobs, didn't even know who Mike Rowe was. So she got incorporated in his entire speech. Every time he turned around and mentioned some show or something, he looks, have you heard of that one, Barbara? He pulled her in, and his comedy style was very free flowing. And it wasn't, most of the time when Grant Cardone would bring a guest up, he would sit them on a chair and they would have an interview and backwards and forth. Yesterday we heard from Martha Smith. We heard from, oh jeepers, what did I do with my notes? Martha Stewart was the last one we had last night. She came into the back room. We had Bob Dugan. Who else did we have? We had Eric Trump at some time over the last 3 days. Dr. Mackey. I can't even pronounce her surname, and I'm not even going to attempt it because I would really screw that up. We've had some amazing speakers, and he's just sat there and interviewed them. But with Mike Rowe, he gave him the stage. And he was just story after story after story after story. But he was telling his whole story and filling in the blanks with different stories that he had done, things that he had experienced doing the dirty jobs, plus other things that had happened to him in his life. And he is a born storyteller, and he brings the comedy in. And I was just like, I could sit here for hours. Well, all of a sudden, we went from being on the main stage with him back into the virtual lounge, and Grant Cardone came in, and he says, I'm going to do something, because he's normally he doesn't do this, but we got to introduce to the next speaker before the main stage got to see who the next speaker was. And he's promised us a recording of Mike Rowe's presentation, because some of us were a little upset that we had been pulled out of the main stage, because Mike Rowe was such an entertaining storyteller. He brought in another storyteller. And this guest is known in the movie world, and very, very interesting guy to listen to. And he doesn't consider himself an actor. He doesn't really consider himself a business person. He is a storyteller. And so we got to pull back the curtains a little. He pulled back the curtains a little bit just to give us a glimpse into who he really is and that sort of thing. And it was the actor Ryan Reynolds. And so we had him there for about 10 minutes before they then put us back to the main room to see the ending, to see the last few minutes of Mike Rowe's thing. And so Ryan could go and get ready to get up on stage with Grant Cardone. And then they brought them out there, and they were having this interaction backwards and forwards, and there was just story after story after story, which is what has inspired tonight's thing, because today's been one of those really wacky, crazy days. I don't know what it was really Freaky Friday here today. Like, I'm on my computer. For some reason, my mouse would not pull up my little icons along the bottom of my screen. I couldn't minimize any windows. I couldn't bring up any new windows because I couldn't access my apps along the bottom of the screen. I tried rebooting the computer. My mouse I had on the charge last night, so it was fully charged. It's Bluetooth. And so then I'm like, oh my gosh, and so then I'm working on my, this was before everything went live with Grant Cardone's 10X conference. So I was on my laptop, working on my laptop, and then my stomach was having issues. It really felt like I consumed onions somewhere along the way. And I'm like, I don't have anything in the house with onions in it. I'm actually allergic to onions. And yeah, it's not pleasant when they arrive, when that reaction happens. And that's what it felt like was going on in my stomach. So it was an interesting dealing with work, dealing with that, trying to find a mouse that I could plug into my computer. And I'm like thinking, okay, so I'm walking around the house with my laptop, trying to find a wired mouse to plug into my computer. I turned everything off again. I reset everything again. And so then I went into my settings and I said, let's put that menu across the bottom. Let's put it on the left side. So I did that and rebooted the computer so it would pick that up. And I do have a Mac. I'm a Mac person all the way through. And then all of a sudden, everything was working. And I was like, this is such a crazy day. And dealing with stomach issues through all of this. So it's been a very wacky day. And then we've had some very interesting things that came through the chat as well. But being able to, when the chat quieted down, I was able to watch what was going on the stage there while I worked on some other stuff as well. So multitasking, listening, and keeping an ear open. But Micro and Ryan Reynolds were talking about the importance of telling stories, why we need to tell them. A lot of people learn best through story. There are people out there who will not remember a single fact you tell them. If you're just lecturing, they won't remember anything. But if you put it into a story, they're more likely to be interested in it. They're more likely to remember it. And this is the message that came from both of these guys about telling stories and the importance of them. So that's how we came up with talking about stories tonight. And like I said, it came from a whirlwind day full of a lot of stuff that just happened. Research gives us facts, but storytelling brings those facts to life. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the magic of stories. So why does storytelling matter when it comes to family history? It's because the facts don't always stick, but stories do. A birth certificate tells you that your great-grandmother was born in 1882, but the story tells you that she grew up barefoot on a farm, ran away at 16 to work in a textile mill, and wore a brooch every Sunday that she swore kept her heart steady. That's the difference between a tree and a tapestry. So you have the tree, the family tree, then over here you have the tapestry, which is intertwining all of these stories from your ancestors into this beautiful, weaving them all into this beautiful tapestry. When we tell our stories, we're not just listing ancestors, we're giving them a voice, an emotion, and a legacy. So as I said earlier today, I heard two incredible speakers who are master storytellers. They made me laugh. They made me tear up a little bit. And all they did was talk. But they used their tone. It's not about dramatizing. It's about humanizing. That's what we're doing. We're humanizing our ancestors. We're making sure that we remember that they were real people who walked this earth before us. We are following in the footsteps of our ancestors. Details create a connection. A story comes alive when we talk about the rain hitting the ship deck, the creak of the attic stairs, the scent of an old recipe being cooked. Every story has an arc, a beginning, a middle, and an end, a conflict, a resolution, even if the story is short. And most of all, we share the why. Don't just say what your ancestor did. Try to understand what drove them. What did they fear? What did they love? And we bring this all together. And we've got a couple of examples here. We've got my ancestor came through Ellis Island in 1903. What's that? It's a fact. They came through Ellis Island in 1903. But if we did something like we had done some digging, we had found maybe a photograph that was taken of them in 1903 when they had just arrived in New York. So we then tell the story. In a secondhand coat and a borrowed suitcase, he stepped onto Ellis Island dock with just one phrase memorized in English, looking for work. You feel the difference? Would you rather hear the story saying my ancestor came through Ellis Island in 1903, or would you rather hear in a secondhand coat and a borrowed suitcase, he stepped onto the Ellis Island dock with just one phrase memorized in English, looking for work? Which are you more likely to pay attention to? You can let us know in the chat too. I'm going to open up the chat here so I can see it. You can let us know in the chat what you think about the differences in the two. Which would you rather listen to? The fact or the little bit of a story that goes behind it, that goes with it? Now, I was looking at this earlier. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. Do I do it now? Hang on. I'm just looking through my notes real quick. Okay, I'm going to do it now anyway. It's my show. I can do what I like. So we need to share screen, which is this button here. And I need to go to this one. Yes. Okay, let's see. Are we live with this one? Yes, we are. Okay, so this is my third great-grandfather. This is one we're trying to find. But we're not actually going to look at his story right now because we still have some gaps. Now, we know his father's name is Joseph Price because it was written on his marriage certificate. That was his father's name. I've got no idea what his mother's name is. The system seems to think that this Louisa Garner could be his mother. I don't know. I haven't researched. That's sitting there as a prompt, but I could probably go in and put in another name there if I wanted to, if I found a different name. So his wife was Elizabeth Morris. Oh, excuse me. From the census, we know that he was alive in 1851, but by November of 1852, he died. Simply because on her wedding certificate from November of 1852, it says that she was a widow. Such a thing. Anyway, so we've got William Henry Morris Price. He's my second great-grandfather. He's got a lot to tell us. We've got some more hints there too to go and sort out. All right, so this is all of his facts and figures and everything else. These are all the sources that are over here. You got down here when he arrived in New Zealand. We've even got the name of the ship, the Warwick. He came in at Wellington. He was a bookbinder. And this is how I started putting pieces together when we found his baptismal record. Because his father had been a jeweler and his father had been a jeweler, because on his father's marriage certificate to his mother, so on their marriage certificate, William Henry Morris Price and Elizabeth Morris's wedding certificate, it stated that he was an agent and his dad, Joseph, was a jeweler. So we knew that had been passed down. I'm like, well, why didn't my second great-grandfather become a jeweler? And that's when we found the baptismal record and we suddenly saw what his stepfather's occupation was as a bookbinder. Now I know how he became a bookbinder. So we have that part of the story. Now here in Ancestry, we have a thing called Life Story. This is really cool. It takes all of those facts and puts them into a story for you. And you can put other details into the story as well. So it has that William Henry Morris was born on November the 18th, 1849 in Wanstead, Essex, England, the son of Elizabeth and William. He married Martha Sophia Anglis, my second great-grandmother, on July the 12th, 1869. They had 10 children in 17 years. I tell you, these ancestors, they were busy with kids. He died on May 21st, 1937 in Wellington, New Zealand at the age of 87 and was buried in Karori. That should be cemetery in there. He's in the Karori Cemetery in Wellington, New Zealand. This is basically the tree that shows you this is him. Here's his parents. Here's his wife. Here's their daughter, who is my great-grandmother. And then we go ... down to me. We can see where they were on the map. We can click those areas there. 18th of November, 1849. Now, I want you, this doesn't actually show this on here, which I might end up putting into the story. But right here it says that here's his name, where he was born and everything else. But this here says, what was Wanstead, England like when William Henry was born? So if I click here to ask Ancestry AI, it brings up these options over here. Tell me about popular baby toys from around this time. Tell me about birth traditions in that era. What type of baby clothes were popular around that time? What was the town like that he was in? And so it actually gives you some history of the town, of what it would have been like. Actually, let me blow this up for you guys. It tells you this, the social structure, the cultural life. So you get some background information on the town where he was born. We could look at what type of baby clothes were popular during that time. And babies would wear long dresses or gowns made of soft cotton or linen fabrics. These dresses were often white or pastel colored and had high waists with intricate embroidery or lace details. To keep warm, babies would have worn knitted wool bonnets or caps on their heads. They might have also worn small mittens to protect their hands from the cold. Footwear, babies would have worn soft leather booties or socks to keep their feet warm and protected. So that talks about that, what were the birth traditions? So you can find out. So this gives you some background into the thing of what may have happened around that time that my second great grandfather was born. So they've got the midwifery practice, religious customs, and cultural celebrations. So you've got that information there that can help pad out the story, what life was like during that time. We've got here that in 1851, he was living in Wanstead, Essex, which is when the census took place. We've got here the death of his father. It should say about. I don't know why it didn't pull that over, but, or even right down here it says about, because we don't really know. And then his half-brother was born on the 28th of November 28th, 1854 in Shoreditch, Middlesex, England, when Henry Morris was 5 years old. And if back a couple of nights ago, we found out that he was baptized, that William Henry Morris was baptized on his 6th birthday. Now, you want to see something interesting. So let's go back to the facts. And let's go and have a look at William Henry Morris Price for a quick second. Now remember, my second great grandfather was born in November of 1849, but his parents didn't get married till the 7th of May, 1850, after my second great grandfather was born. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? So you can pull these facts. And so to tell this whole story, I have to look at how my, oops, hang on, I need to stop sharing. Where's that button? I have to look at my second great grandfather's parents and their story, have a look at my second great grandfather's story as well. And so I can combine the two in there. Yes, the life story just gives the facts about my second great grandfather, but to make the story more complete, I need to add in other information from things like his parents got married after he was born, and then also add in that his father passed away when his mother got remarried, when his first half brother was born, and that the fact that they were actually baptized together on the same day. Just pulling in those other little details. The other details I can bring in is what was life like during that time with the Ancestry AI, pulling in all that information. What things in history were happening at that time that would have affected the family. So going through history, through the timeline in history, and putting in those major historical events that have been recorded that may have impacted their lives during that time, and just giving the bigger story. So now let's get back to, so you can see how you got to build on the thing. You're building on the facts. You're padding the details a little bit with things that were there. So how do you turn research into storytelling? So start with a scene, not the date. Imagine their world. What could they see, hear, and feel? Use the historical context. What was happening at that time? Was it the Great Depression? Was there a war? Was there an immigration wave? Let those pieces frame the emotion of the story. Then draw from documents. A census shows who lived in the home, but what was the dynamic? Were they boarders? Were there two families crowded in one house? Does a photo show a stern man in a hat, but is that pride in his eyes or exhaustion? So here is one thing you can do is write one paragraph about an ancestor as if you were introducing them in a novel. It doesn't need to be perfect, just honest and human. So there's a challenge for you. Okay, the other one is the listener challenge. So now it's time for your challenge. Don't worry, there's no homework, just heart work. Pick one ancestor, just one. Take what you know about them. Maybe it's just the birth year and a photo, and write a few lines about who they were. Imagine them. Give them a voice. Look at what then feel, if you're brave, share it. Have a look at what was going on, like we said in the previous things. Have a look at what was going on around them at that time. What were the conditions like during that time for a family who had a father? In this case, my second great grandfather was a bookbinder, and his father was a jeweler. Well, his birth father was a jeweler. His stepfather was a bookbinder. Then on his mother's side, her father was a gardener. So what could you pull from those to bring them in to make this a little more rounded? You don't need to be a writer to be a storyteller. You just need curiosity and compassion. And then as you go through your family research this week, I encourage you to pause before you click save on that new record. Instead, close your eyes and imagine that person behind the name. They had dreams. They had regrets. They might have loved deeply or carried a secret or danced in the kitchen when no one was looking. That would be me. Oh, actually, Zeffy's always watching, but, because you're the person, you are the one who gives them the voice. You are the one who gets to tell the story. So take it when you're looking at the records, just close your eyes and imagine the photographs that you have seen over the years of some of these people, these ancestors of yours. What pictures have you seen? What pictures do you have of them? And just close your eyes and just be with your ancestor and imagine what it would have been like to live in that time. Who is this person behind the name? You may have photographs of them. You've got a lot of facts, but who is this person? So that is your challenge for today, is just to go and pick an ancestor and just write a story about them. It doesn't need to be long. It just needs to be a paragraph. Just pick one episode in their thing, like when they got baptized. Did they cry? Did they not cry? When they on the census report, now they have an occupation. The last time you saw them on the census report 10 years beforehand, they were a student. Now they are a bookbinder. How did they become a bookbinder? You can put on, my story will be that, even though his birth father was a jeweler and his grandfather had been a jeweler, his mother had remarried when he was 5 or 6, around that time. 5. No, it might have actually been 4. Hang on. 3. They got married in 1852. Yeah, so 3 years. So he was 3 when his mother got married, and her second husband was a bookbinder. So he didn't know anything about his father or his father's trade. The only thing he knew was his stepfather's business as a bookbinder, and that's how he ended up being a bookbinder. So make a story that goes around those details. If you're in the Ancestry and you've got access to use those the Ancestry AI, look and see what details were on, what historical events were happening around that time. It could have been during wartime. He could have been serving in the war. Where did he serve? Find his military records and have a look and see where he served, because they will have in there what campaigns he worked in, and then you can go and research those campaigns, and now you can create and see if you can find somebody's journal entry that mentions what times were like during that time. So when you are looking at the facts, also look to, was there a newspaper article? Did somebody write a journal about it? Were there letters written that described the time? Which would be amazing if you could get copies of those. And then you can turn around and create that story using their own words of what was it like to be in the trenches of wherever it was they were. What was it like to be, being a paratrooper during the landings at Normandy? What was it like on Victory Day? Listen for those stories, listen for those events, and create the stories that will tell your ancestors' lives. Give them a voice. Who are they? Nothing is more powerful than being able to share a story of your ancestor. It could just be one event. It could be his entire life story. Maybe you make a mission that you're going to tell this particular person's life story. And because you've got a lot of different files and everything else, so let's combine it into a story. Files and newspaper articles and letters and journals, and you've got stuff coming up the wazoo. So let's take all that stuff, combine it into a story that tells this person's life. What do I do with it? somebody spent a lot of years researching this book, which is part of my ancestry. It's got 6 generations of this family in there. There is story after, yes, there is a lot of facts in here. Let's see, where is it? One about my great aunt. I can't. Oh yeah, so they've got here, Patty's line of descent is complicated by the second marriage of her father. That's my second great-grandfather. And the genealogy given in the tree depends largely on the facts given in her sister's book. Parish baptismal records were not available for the family, seems to have been baptized in conviction. Her great-grandmother, known for her piety, not sure what that word means, was Anne Eakins, the daughter of Thomas Longland. In the book Patty C. Eakins, Her Life in Letters, edited by her sister Annie Johnson Eakins, published in the year 1901, we read, our great-grandfather George Eakins farmed at Woodhurst, where the old family home may yet be seen. The youngest son, John Longland Eakins, died there in 1881, aged 82. The name of our great-grandmother is still fragrant as of one who earnestly followed her Savior at the time when religious efforts was more uncommon than it is now, and therefore required on a part of those who practiced it no little self-denial. So that was actually an excerpt, and then they've actually got another bigger excerpt over here that's out of Patty's book. Now, I actually have a copy of Patty's book, so if I wanted to do a book on her life, I've got all of her letters in that book that talk about her life. She even talks about her family members in there as well. So I can go in and have a look at her story and see, who did she mention in there? What did she say about them? And because she became the storyteller and wrote, and copies of her letters became a book, it gives us a glimpse into the life that she lived while living in the manor at Warboys, and the people that passed through there, the people that she was related to, the people that came and visited. Things like that. Who were these people that came to visit? They had the last name Eakins, so sometimes she would mention what their relationship was to the family, sometimes she would not. But then she could also be referring to somebody who has previously visited, and you got to go back through the book and figure out who they are. So, but this is 6 generations, 6 centuries, 600 years. That's a lot of generations in this book. I'm don't know when he first started. Saying here goes back to 1547. There's people here in 1547 that goes on. Trying to see if he's got a date in here. Part 1. Let's have a look on part 1. Oh, Shropshire, around 1400 to 1615 is part 1. So there's, forgotten here, Thomas Longland and his descendants, the wills of 1547, the bishop's bequests, the move to Buckdom, Huntingdonshire, Margaret Longland, the personage of Tinchwick, Buckinghamshire, and her daughter Cecilia Williams. Oh, and Roger de Longdelandy. It's got extra E's in there, so Longland. But yeah, so this is a lot of history, a lot of research. There are little story pieces in there, along with just paragraphs with facts in there. So, you could make it that way. You can also turn it into a novel. And I don't have it in here, but my great-grandmother wrote a story. And the rumor in the family is that's loosely based on her life. So that kind of gives it sort of like, she probably didn't want to tell it as it was. So she put it in story form so we would have a different way to remember it. And you can do that, take an adventure in somebody's life, in your ancestor's life. And because you don't have a lot of facts, you might have to make up some stuff in it. So now it becomes a novel based on, and then you can put that this book is based on this person's life, and things like that. And you can put some references in there when you have the facts for that. So all sorts of fun and games that you can have. Right now, I got to go walk a puppy. So with that, we are out of here. Become a storyteller for your family. You don't need to be a writer. Just talk what you know and just put a little added details in there of what the time was like, maybe what they were wearing. You heard the difference of, he arrived, he went through Ellis Island in 1903 to him having a secondhand coat that he was wearing as he stepped onto the docks, and he only learned one English phrase that he was looking for a job. So with that, we are out of here. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys